Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, where we'll be discussing the NeoSystems Costpoint Elevate program, as well as talking about some of the key features in Costpoint 8.2 that we think you should be aware of as you prepare for your upgrade. I'm Don Carnevale, Director of Marketing at NeoSystems, and I'll be your moderator for today's event. Now I'd like to hand off to our featured speaker today, Susan Mitchell, Chief Financial Officer at NeoSystems. Susan?
Thank you, Don. Hi, everyone. I'm Susan Mitchell, Chief Financial Officer at NeoSystems, and I'm going to talk to you today about Costpoint Elevate. So we're going to kind of go right in here. And hang on, I'm trying to get my slides to progress. So what we're going to talk about, the first thing is, what is Costpoint 8.2 Elevate? And just walk through this process. We're going to talk through some Costpoint 8.2 features, and then if you have any questions at the end, we will open it up for questions. So what is Costpoint 8.2 Elevate? So the reason I wanted to do this webinar was to kind of get the word out for everyone that now is the time to start thinking about how to kind of take Costpoint to that next level for you. So what Elevate is it's an approach to the upgrade that allows you to assess your current usage of the system and develop a plan for getting more usage out of the system and capitalizing on your investment. But the first thing I want to start with is I want to start with kind of a definition to kind of level set how you think about this. So what is a system? And many of you are going to say, well, I know what a system is. But I want to point out it's an organized system of manual and computerized methods, procedures, and controls. And you'll understand probably a little bit later why I highlighted manual on this particular slide. Costpoint is a tool that is part of a system. So the more that you can automate in a system, you gain efficiencies and you reduce the risk of error. So it's kind of the fundamental concept of why you want to automate. So as part of this process, so what is the process for Costpoint Elevate? Like, what do you do? So step one is you gain an understanding of the company's current Costpoint usage. So how do you do that? So the first thing you do is you assess what you were licensed for versus what you are using. I point this out because many times when we at NeoSystems have gone and we've looked at people's systems and things and we've talked to people, we've found that they might have been licensed for something that they're not using. And the question then becomes, why aren't you using it? Sometimes it's they haven't had time to implement it. They didn't, understand something. So that's one of the first questions you want to look at. What are you licensed for and what are you using? Do you have modules that are sitting dormant, and why? So why aren't you using them? Why aren't you taking advantage of the capability that you are licensed for? How long has the company been using Costpoint? This is an important feature of asking of the questions and gaining an understanding of your company, because sometimes, the company might have implemented Costpoint 10 years ago. And as they've been upgrading, they haven't been looking at new functionality that's come along that could help them. So that's one thing that you want to kind of get a feel for. Gather statistics on usage. So how much, what is the volume? So how many vendor invoices are being processed in a month? How many bills are produced in a month? Get an idea of statistical usage of certain functions and things like that. Are there third-party interfaces with Costpoint? So are there, what interfaces are there? What are you doing? What did you go and have a third-party application that you paid for to interface with the system, and what is it doing for you? And then the last one is, what extensions or customizations exist? So are there things that over the course of time, you've put extensions in place, or you've done customizations or things like that, and what are those doing for you? And when I say that, it doesn't have to be the full-on details of every, data element and things that are in that extension, but it needs to be at least a general understanding of what is the purpose of that extension and what is it doing. And the reason that's important in this is that as things as you upgrade and as Deltek puts in, additional functionality, you might want to revisit some of these and change how you are doing those, because it could save money, it could save time. There's a variety of things. So that's step one. So gain an understanding of the company's current cost point usage. Step two, talk to your internal subject matter experts. And when I say talk to your internal subject matter experts, I don't necessarily mean you're a resident cost point expert that knows how everything should be running. Talk to your process area subject matter experts. And when I say that, I mean your accounts payable supervisor, your accounting manager, your billers, the people that actually use the system, the ones that will say, well, this is how I'm doing this process now, because they're going to be the ones that are going to be able to tell you how the system is actually being used and allow you to identify places where you could make their jobs easier using additional functionality that's in the system available to them. And then ask those users about their entire process. And when I say that, I mean the full process. So if they're doing AP, ask them where they get the source documents, like what starts their process off, what entries, how do things get into the system? What are the approvals? What are the edits? What are the outputs? So get an understanding of their entire process that they are doing. Find out what pain points they have. So ask them, what do you struggle with every day? What takes you a lot of time? What do you dread doing? Because those are going to be things where, you will find things that you'll be able to help them by taking advantage of this additional functionality. Determine what is currently being done manually in Excel. So this is where, when you're talking to SMEs, that they will say, well, I do this spreadsheet over here, or I do this here, or I have this manual place where I record things. Those are the places that you want to focus on, where they are doing manual things that could be done in the system. And those are the areas where you're going to be able to make a substantial, impact on them being more efficient and basically cost effective in performing their job. And then look for duplication. So anytime they tell you, well, I enter it here and I do it here, or they're doing the same kind of thing multiple times, that is definitely an area that you want to look to for improvement, and look to see if there is a new function or a new process or something that they can take advantage of, to stop that, duplication of entry. Step three, review cost point. So when I say review cost point, we're talking the control settings screens. So after you have those conversations, take that feedback and review cost point. So review the control settings screens, and there could be new things that have come that you can take advantage of a setting or a change or something like that. Gain an understanding of the core architecture elements if you don't already have an understanding of that. So the project, the account, the org, the Impl ID, vendor ID, customer ID, reorg, ref numbers, tags. So kind of the core fundamental architecture elements, how are they being used and how are they relating to one another? One of the things that I will say sometimes when I've done these types of projects is that I will find that there are different elements, some of these fundamental elements that weren't initially implemented or weren't needed, but could easily solve a problem for a user. So like reorgs as an example, some people aren't familiar with those. Reorgs can definitely be a good tool for some users. Review system reports for anomalies. Do they make sense? This is another one. It's a very fundamental thing, but one of the things that will tell you if you have opportunities is that things won't necessarily tie or something. So if I go to, say tie my revenue summary report to my general ledger, accounts, they don't tie or something, or, if PSRs, various reports don't tie, that tells me that there is more that needs to be looked at, and that there's, you need to figure out kind of the root cause of those. And again, it's an opportunity to make things better for your company. Run the toolkits used to identify anomalies. So this is another one in many cases, and the one that I always like is the one where it compares the general ledger to the project ledger, where I'll go in and we'll find that that hasn't been done, and folks are experiencing some troubles. So use the toolkits and run those toolkits. Review the list of pain points from SME conversations versus functionality. So one thing that I will say, and in many cases, is that when going through and looking at what the subject matter experts told me they were having problems with, sometimes there are easy things that you can go back and show them or do to make their life better. And some are instantaneous, some are, more long-term. But again, that's one thing that you can do to kind of get improve your system and improve its usage. Step 4, identify new functions to implement. So once you've gone through these first 3 processes, this is when you can start looking at, the 8.2 kind of features and things that are coming out. You can essentially go through and kind of start to do your mapping. So this is where you would want to document a detailed list of new functions for possible use, and list those items and include the following. So one, the issue, and really that's more what are you trying to make easier? Are you trying to make AP entry easier? Are you trying to, what are you trying to do? The functionality that's going to fix that. So is it a control change? Is it a new feature you want to take advantage of? Like, what is it? The business impact. So you're going to want to have an idea of what this is going to do for you. And that's one reason why in step 2, you're gathering some of those statistics and things. So you're going to want to have a feel for the business impact. The estimated time and cost to implement that. So some of these are going to be, very simplistic. Some of these might take a little longer, but you're going to want to get an estimate of how long that's going to take you. And then prioritization. So sometimes there are things that, they're barn burners. You want to take advantage of them as soon as you can. Sometimes it might be, kind of, further down the line, but you eventually want to do it. And then note what I call the low-hanging fruit. So these are ones where you've talked to the SMEs, you've gone back and you've looked at the functions and everything. You've looked at the 8.2, you've looked at everything that's coming out, and you've realized that it's literally a quick training session with the users that can enable them to double productivity. And the example that I always like to use with this, that I've come across with users, is sometimes when I'm going through the discussions with a SME, they'll say, it would be great if, I didn't have all these extra columns showing on this thing. I have to tab through this and it takes me forever. That one is a simple one where you can literally reorganize the columns so that the 10 ones that they enter to are at the far left, and that can make their lives so much easier, and then they don't have to tab through a bunch of things that they're not going to enter. So there's that. You can hide fields. There's all sorts of things you can do. But again, that is something where it's a quick, it's something quick that you can fix. The other one that I've come across is a change to a control setting. So many of the users that are out in the field, the everyday users, they don't know, how the system is set up. They don't know that there's a control screen that is driving many of the things that they do. So they, might be experiencing an issue, and it's literally sometimes as simple as a control screen needs to be changed. So with that, most companies have a process where they are very restrictive of the control screens, as they should be, but there's a process that you can go through to kind of coordinate that change, get that change approved, socialize it, put it, everybody knows that it's going to happen, and then make the change so that that simple fix can be done. So again, the low-hanging fruit. And then the other thing on the new functions to implement is once you have this list, socialize the list. And when I say that, what I mean is put it out to everyone, let people see, what what the outcome was of the SME discussions, let other people have inputs to it, and get buy-in, because that's ultimately what it's going to help you do, is get everybody kind of moving on the same path. And then step 5, develop a plan. So what that means is, do you have the requisite skill set internally to implement the new functionality? So, most companies have, some excellent cost point gurus that I have, met and talked to, and, they can do fantastic things with the system and the functions. But that's the first question. Do you have the skill set internally to do this? The second one is, how long will it take? And are there any third parties that need to be coordinated with? So in saying that, sometimes if people will want to take advantage, a good example of this is, say they haven't been using ACH, automated ACHs, and they want to start using the automated process. That is going to involve some coordination with your bank. You're going to have to get the file format. You're going to have to do some test feeds and things like that. So there's going to be coordination with the bank on that. So you would want to account for that time and that coordination that you would have to do with your bank. So that's what I mean when I say third party, coordination with third parties. How will you test, and where will you get your test plan? So if you're going to implement, plan and implement these things, what ones do you want to test? How do you want to test them? Will you have a test database? When do you need your test database set up? Who's going to test? How is that process going to work? So that's part of your plan that you want to figure out. And then will training need to be provided to users, and who will develop that training? So if it's a new process, and the one that I like to think of for 8.2 is the one with on the billing, where the billing fee is separate. You can do non-labor and labor now. You can have different fee percentages. So on that one, you want to implement it and use it. So how are you going to do that? Are you going to go back and apply it to old contracts? If you do that, what have you been doing current up to this point to get the bills out the door? Is there going to be, are you going to just use it on new ones going forward? How are you going to roll that out? And do you need to train users? And then the last question is, do your internal resources have the time? So are they going to have the time to go through and do what's needed, or what is the timeline for that? I always advise people when they're doing this is to have very focused, time periods that they're going to do this. Don't just drag it out and throw things out there and say, when you get a chance, go test this, because that is where I see people have the most problem, and they never really complete their execution. So that's kind of the elevate the steps to get to your plan, and how you would elevate your, how you would assess and figure out what you want to do, and then develop your plan, and then you would execute on that plan. So Dawn, I think we have a little survey question for our attendees today.
We do. We have a quick poll that we're going to launch here right now. And this basically is asking, in general, when you do an upgrade for Costpoint, how much of that new functionality from Costpoint do you find yourself using? So if you go ahead and submit your answer, we'll give everyone just a few moments to do that, and then we'll share the responses. All right, looks like most have responded, so I'm going to go ahead and end that and share the results.
Okay. That is an interesting, percentage. Okay, so diving on into our 8.2 features. So And hold on. There we go. So the first thing for those, so some of you have seen things, some of you haven't. So what we're going to walk through, I'm going to kind of talk through by module the various things that have kind of come, and then as time permits, I will go into the system and actually walk you through, some things. So for the general, in general, overall, 8.2, there are some, fantastic things that have come with 8.2. One is being the in-app guidance. So this one is, initially, and you can turn this off or turn it on. Initially, when you go, on to 8.2, you can have the in-app guidance turned on. And what that does is that when you go into a screen, it will actually bring up, videos and kind of walk you through like any new functionality that's in that area. So that's kind of, I really liked that. It was very interesting to walk through 8.2 and have it kind of show you as you're going through it. What was new for that screen or that, module or, domain and things like that. The other thing is the new look and feel for navigation. So you now have, recent applications that it will show you. It has open, the open applications like it always has, but it essentially has those things. And then you can update the My menu so that you have kind of a task flow. And I'll show you an example of that when I go to the demo screen. There's quick finds in application screens and subtasks. So now when you go into, say, projects, you don't have to do as much clicking and things like that to do the querying, which I don't, basically to me, when I was going through 8.2, the amount of clicking that I have to do to get places is substantially decreased. So the user experience is I can move much faster around things. And then it also has the dark mode. So dark mode, for those of you that are, the tech folks, I always laugh because most of the programmers I know always have their screens in dark mode. But it has a dark mode now. So if you don't like, the Deltek, the blue that's always in the background, you now have the dark mode option. And then interactive emails. So this one is essentially where, for those of you that would get emails to approve things in the past, and you would have to go and you would have to log into Costpoint to go approve it, there is now the feature where when the email comes to you, it will show you, like using a timesheet as an example, it will show you the timesheet information and you can approve from the email or reject. So that's a very nice feature that has come with 8.2. There's pre-configured approval workflows. So there are ones, for billing approval, there's ones that come in the application already pre-configured. In regards to accounting, so in the accounting domain, there you have the multi-user report printing. So where it used to be when you would go into post-cash receipts or post-cash disbursements, you can now go in, multiple people could go in and run the process and it will essentially queue them. So you don't have that kind of, log jam that you would have in the, report printing and posting screen. There's cash receipts enhancements. So the whole concept of being able to load cash receipts, from the bank and everything has had significant enhancements on that. So that's another one that I'm very excited about in 8.2. The ability to import AP vouchers via CSV. So for a long time, the file format had been, kind of in one, format. Now we have the ability to do the CSV. Intelligent character recognition for voucher creation. So this is another thing that's coming along with 8.2, which allows you, this further streamlines that AP process, allowing us to load things instead of having to hand key many things. And then vendor updates through the supplier portal. So the concept behind this one is that you can actually have a vendor. So if a vendor needed, say, their address updated or something in their vendor master that needed to be updated, they can go and do that update. And then it puts it so that whoever manages vendors within your company could then approve that and have it, go into the system. So that's a nice feature because it's more self-service for your vendors. In the projects area, so I talked a little bit earlier about the ability to split labor and non-labor fees and billing, which that's one that I'm very excited about. The COBRA interface applications have moved to the project domain, so they're kind of in their own place. So if you don't use COBRA, my one caution on that is that if you have, some of us have bootlegged that COBRA mapping value over the course of time to put other things in it. Just know that you might have to have an extension or something once you go to 8.2 if you're not licensed for COBRA, because that field will not be there. So just keep that in mind as you're, again, when you're planning your upgrade and you're looking at all of these features and things like that. The multi-user reports. So again, what we talked about in the general ledger area is, over on the standard bills, has the same functionality. So multiple people can go into post bills and it kind of basically queues them. The performance optimization. So if you are a large organization and you have, large calculating and posting of bills, the performance is, they've been improving performance on that. So that's a good thing. On the pool rates, so if you ever have had the arithmetic overflow error from, the arithmetic overflow error when you have a pool that, essentially isn't functioning correctly, but it ended up with an extremely high rate, and you got this arithmetic overflow error, there are now things in the system to help you deal with that and identify that and rectify it. Also in the billing area, you now have the ability to put transactions on hold for a specific time. So instead of just putting it on hold and then having, coming back next month and having to deal with it, you can put it on hold and say, I'm putting this on hold until, December or, a specific time. And then the ability to track previously reversed bills. So for those of you that have ever had to go and reverse a bill and then send it back out to a PM and then have them reject it for some reason, and then you have to reverse the bill, you kind of go through that process. You can actually track the previously reversed bills. So you can kind of see the history of what happened with that bill. Okay, and then in the materials area, we have RMA functionality. So for anyone that's been doing RMAs, that there is now functionality to help you track that and everything. You can create requisition delivery schedules. So if you want, if you know when you're going to want to have those requisitions, you can actually do, kind of the delivery schedule. Address in the ship ID lookup. This is one that is nice because if you've ever tried to go look up things there and the address wasn't there, it was not fun. So that has been rectified in 8.2. There's BI enhancements. So there's a lot of other, additional BI reports and dashboards and things like that in 8.2. NAICS codes updates. So this is basically just to keep up to date on all of that. Backflush enhancements. So if you are doing a lot of materials things, you're a manufacturer and backflush is important to you, you're going to be excited about this 8.2. Hyperlinks to other transactions in Costpoint. So you can actually, if you're in, say a purchase order, you can click and go see, say, the requisition or, things like that. It'll take you to that. You can print from the managed screen. So, it used to be where if you were in the purchase orders or you were entering a purchase order, you couldn't actually, you had to go to another screen to print that purchase order. So you can actually print from the managed screen, which is nice. And then print any PO updates. That's another one that it will show you, the updates that have been done for the purchase order. And then the other kind of areas that I'll just kind of briefly touch upon in 8.2 that have had some, some good enhancements. So in the contracts area, it used to be if you were using the opportunities module and you had a new customer that you had to go over to the prospective customers area, like a completely different screen and kind of go through the setup for that. Now what you can do is there's a new field where when you go in to do the lookup and you find that the customer's not there, you can say add new, and it just makes you enter, I think it's like 4 fields, and you can enter that new customer and then be on your way. And note, it is a prospective customer. It does not set it up in the main customer, field. And then Gov1IQ enhancement. So you'll see that they've put many things for you to help with your CMMC stuff. So they will actually, like, you can keep up with the information for your vendors on that. And there's a lot of nice things in that contracts area that will allow you to kind of track various things on your future vendors. Manage leads and contacts enhancements. So they've done there's a lot of things in 8.2 to help with that. And then org security is now available in the contracts area. So it had not previously been there. So now it is there in 8.2, and you can kind of keep people segregated. And in the planning module, there's a lot of things in the planning module that have been updated. Too many, that might actually be an entire webinar. But the process banners to kind of help you through the process are there. The menus have been streamlined. There's additional reporting. There's a lot of new kind of functionality in 8.2 to help, like in the planning module. And then as far as time and expense, I think many of you that attended Deltek ProjectCon probably heard a lot about the time, the time module. So I'm not going to go too far into that today. But there's just a lot of good things. So automatic overtime calculation enhancements, interactive emails, and then the timesheet, just the look and feel of it. They've done a lot to make the timesheet just more user friendly and, just look a lot better. So that said, I am actually going to go over into my 8.2 database. So for those of you that have not seen 8.2, this is 8.2. This is our new UI that we have. You'll see now that it has my recent activities. So anything that I have been in recently now, like will come up here, and I'll see that here. I also have the ability to put in a task flow. So for this one I called, my monthly close task flow. And these were all of the reports that I would want to print, as part of my, monthly close. I can have multiple different, process flows like this. So those are easy to set up. All I have to do is go into my menu and set those up. I also have the ability to do the dark screen. So if I come into, my menu, all I have to do is basically come in and click dark, and it will put me in dark mode. So I will go back to that. And then as far as we were talking about with the projects with the clicking that I was talking about earlier. So one of the things is this find, when we were talking about how to go and do find and things. So instead of, it used to be that I would have to come in here, I would click, go to project, start typing in my project, hit find. Now all I have to do is literally, like if I didn't have a short list or a recent, so it will actually keep my recent ones, my most recent ones here, but I can either start typing and it will pull up anything that looks like that. And then all I have to do is just click on it and it will bring that up. So that is definitely a nice feature that takes away a lot, of clicking. And that option is in many of the screens now, like where you're going to go do lookups and things. So then the next item that I will walk you through really quickly was the item over in the contracts area, where you can do just a new, and I'll just take you there really quickly. So this is, hold on. Forgive me for 1 second. So yeah, this is the area where you can do the add new. And then the other one I will show you really quickly. So over in the supplier portal. So this is now where your suppliers, if you are using the supplier portal and people can log into your supplier portal, this is where your vendors can go in and update their information. And then it is out there for you to approve that change before it goes into your actual vendor master. And then the last thing, sorry, because I'm running kind of short on time, is the is just under the project setup area. We'll go back here really fast. And I just want to show you in this bill screen. So when you go to choose that fee on cost, this is the screen where you now will have the ability to enter in the various percentages that you want. So again, that's a great feature that we can take advantage of. Okay, so Dawn, do we have any questions?
We do have a few questions that have come in, Susan. I'm going to go ahead and read those off as they've come in. One question is, I have employees entering timesheets to different projects on multiple orgs in time and expense, but when posting the labor distribution, it reverts back to their home org and not the correct project org. Why would this be?
So what I would say on that is if it's going in on the timesheet, what you would want to look at is you would want to look at what is exporting from time, how the export parameters have been set for what is coming over into Costpoint. So what I mean when I say that is there's different methodologies on what will come in, from the time, like from time into the labor area. So it will either be like, it can either come from the timesheet, or you can use what we call the default methodology, where things are defaulted, where the orgs are defaulted in based on the timesheet default methodologies. So that would be what I would look at, is what is actually on that time file and what has been selected from the export to come over, because that sounds like where that problem is coming in for you.
All right, another question that we have is the find field only searching against the project name?
The find field, so when you say that, I need clarity on that question actually. So this field is actually searching on the project, or so like if I typed in direct, it's going to, do direct. If I started typing in the project number, it would do the project number. So it's a combination of the two. Next question.
Sure. An issue I have is copying and pasting journal entry details from Excel. Why would the amounts change from what I originally pasted? Is there a correct format?
So that sounds a little odd. What I would tell you is I have not seen that error happen in any of the ones that I have copied and pasted. I would need to know more, like specifically about what you were doing. The only time, I mean, I'm trying to think of the times that I've seen that happen. I would need to know more on that, like specifically, like I would need to see the file before, like the Excel file before, and then how it reacted once, like specifically what it changed, because sometimes you can kind of see what it's done, and then sometimes, you just have to investigate a little more. So I would need to know more about that one to give you a specific answer. Next
Okay,
question.
sure. The next question is, can you show how to add a prospective customer from the Manage Opportunities screen, and where would the new option be located?
Hold on. So when you come into the opportunities and you come in here, you would say add new. So I would say I'll do NeoSystems. And the prospective customer ID, the one thing to note is whatever you put in here as the prospective customer ID is not the, like that's not necessarily the final customer ID. Your AR department or whoever has the chance to put it into the, the numbering format that they normally would use. So then you just hit save and select, and then it populates that. Next question.
That is all the questions we have right now. We'll do one final call for questions before we sign off. So if anyone has any additional questions regarding the features that Susan showed from Costpoint 8.2 or the Costpoint Elevate program, please go ahead and enter those in. A question did just come in. Will 8.2 require a lot of changes to extensions?
It depends on what your extensions are. There are some things, there are some tables and things that have some added fields and added, basically added fields. So you would want to take a look at your extensions and at least make sure, compare that to new functionality that's coming in and make sure that it's not going to be affected by, 8.2. In many cases, so some people, they'll do the kind of the legwork ahead of time and they'll figure out, exactly what's going to be changing. And when they go to do testing, then they know exactly where they need to change their extensions. Some people will go the path of they'll upgrade their database, they'll put their extensions back, and then they'll just go through and test and see, find out then what's, if something's broken. But again, it just depends on how you want to approach those extensions. Any other questions?
We'll give none at the moment. We'll give just a few more seconds to see if any questions come in. And one question I did want to address was we had a couple of people ask if the slide deck and the webinar recording will be available, or we will make those available. We'll follow up with an email in the next day or two with links on how you can access those materials. So you can keep an eye out for those coming soon. So Susan, there are no additional questions. So if you'd like to go ahead and go to that very last slide.
Okay, so what I will tell you is, thank you guys for joining me today. If you have questions after, about this webinar or anything I talked about, or you're interested in knowing more, about, our Neo Elevate, kind of program and what we're doing to kind of help Costpoint users get to 8.2, please reach out. This is my email address. I'm more than happy to answer questions, or if you are struggling with anything, or you think of anything after we get off of here, please let me know, because I'm always here to help you. Thank you.
Thanks, Susan. Thanks, everyone. And thanks for attending, and have a great day. Goodbye.
Bye.